Rich recluse invites homeless veteran and his dog into his mansion. What happens next will shock you. I stood in the grandiose expanse of my mansion, surrounded by opulent artwork and meticulously curated decor, yet felt an emptiness that echoed louder than the silence. My gaze drifted outside the window, where the world thrummed with life, laughter, and connections I no longer felt part of. It was a sunny afternoon, and I could see families enjoying picnics in the park across the street, children running with wild abandon, and couples strolling hand in hand. Each scene was a stark reminder of my isolation, a gilded cage I had built around myself. What am I doing here? I muttered to no one but the empty air. The question lingered, heavy and oppressive, as if the walls themselves were closing in on me. I felt a surge of frustration, a gnawing sense of discontent that had been building for years, and I couldn't ignore it any longer. This sense of purposelessness was becoming unbearable. On an impulse, I grabbed my coat and stepped out into the sunlight, leaving my mansion behind. Park was a place I usually avoided. Felt too public, too raw, too real. But today, something compelled me to walk among the living. As I made my way down the path, I noticed a woman feeding birds and a group of teenagers tossing a frisbee. Laughter rang out, and for a fleeting moment, I felt a twinge of envy. Then I spotted him, Tom Reynolds, sitting on a bench with a scruffy dog at his feet. They were sharing a moment that seemed so pure, so uncomplicated. Tom was laughing, his face transforming into a map of emotion, and I could see the dog Duke nuzzling against him, as if they shared a language only they could understand. I hesitated, my heart racing. What would he want with someone like me? I thought, but as if sensing my gaze, Tom looked up. Our eyes met, and I felt an unexpected jolt of connection. Perhaps it was the warmth of his smile, or the way Duke wagged his tail in greeting. Something shifted in me. "Hey there," Tom called out, his voice friendly and inviting. "You look like you could use some fresh air. Care to join us?" It was an invitation I never expected. Sure," I replied, my voice shaky as I approached. "I'm Richard." "Tom," he said, gesturing to the space beside him, "and this here is Duke." The dog barked happily, as if welcoming me into their little world. I sat down, feeling the weight of my loneliness lift slightly. "You come here often?" I asked, trying to sound casual. "Every day, if I can," Tom replied, his eyes sparkling with a kind of joy I hadn't felt in years. "It's a great place to forget the world for a while. Just me and Duke, living our best lives." "Must be nice," I said, feeling a pang of longing. "I used to enjoy being outside, but I've been stuck in my own head for too long." Tom nodded, his expression shifting to one of understanding. "I get that. Sometimes it feels like the world moves on without you. But you know what? You've got to find your place in it again. Life's too short to be alone." His words struck a chord in me, resonating deeper than I cared to admit. "Easier said than done," I murmured, glancing down at my hands, which were trembling slightly. "I've forgotten what it's like to really connect with someone." "You're connecting with me right now, aren't you?" Tom smiled, his sincerity disarming. "It's never too late to start over, Richard. Sometimes all it takes is a little push from the universe." As we talked, the sun began to dip lower in the sky, painting the park in hues of orange and gold. I found myself sharing more than I intended. My fears, my sense of loss, the suffocating pressure of expectations that had haunted me for years. And in return, Tom spoke of his own battles, of the scars he carried from his past, both physical and emotional. In that moment, I felt something shift within me, a flicker of hope, ignited by the simple act of sharing. Maybe, just maybe, I wasn't as alone as I had believed. The air was thick with an unsettling silence as I watched Tom hesitate at the threshold of my opulent mansion. I had never invited anyone into my home, let alone someone like him. A veteran, homeless, and weary, yet standing tall with an undeniable strength. There was something about him that tugged at my heartstrings. A flicker of humanity I had long buried under layers of wealth and prestige. "Are you sure about this?" Tom asked, glancing around the lavish foyer, his voice tinged with disbelief. "I don't want to impose." I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of my own solitude pressing down on my chest. "You're not imposing, Tom. I can't explain it, but I feel like I need this. I need you here. I want to help." His eyes searched mine for sincerity, and after a moment, he nodded slowly, stepping inside. I felt a rush of relief mixed with anxiety. I was not used to having someone else in my space, let alone someone whose life had been so drastically different from mine. That first night was a whirlwind of awkwardness. I had prepared an elaborate dinner, overcompensating for my nervousness. And as we sat across from each other at the grand dining table, the silence became deafening. I fidgeted with my fork, unsure of what to say. Tom, too, seemed lost in thought, his eyes drifting around my home as if trying to absorb the foreignness of it all. "Listen," I finally ventured, breaking the silence. "You can be honest with me. What do you think of all this?" I gestured around the room, filled with expensive art and decor. Tom chuckled softly, shaking his head. "It's like a museum in here, Richard. I'm just a guy who has been living on the streets. This is a lot to take in." I felt a flush of embarrassment creep up my neck. "I know it's overwhelming, but I want to understand. I want to know what life has been like for you." His expression shifted, and for the first time I saw a flicker of vulnerability. "You really want to know?" "More than anything," I replied, leaning forward, eager to connect. "All right," began, his voice steady but laced with emotion. "I served in the military. I thought I was doing something noble, something that would make my family proud. But when I came back, everything changed. I was a stranger to myself. The things I saw, they haunt me. And then losing my family, losing my home, it was all too much." As he spoke, I felt the walls I had built around my heart begin to crack. Here was a man who had faced the unimaginable, who had endured pain I could scarcely comprehend. I tried to relate, to share my own struggles, but they felt so trivial in comparison. "And what about you, Richard?" Tom asked, his gaze piercing through my facade. "What's it like to live in a house like this and still feel so alone?" The question hit me hard. It's suffocating, honestly. I've spent my life chasing success, accolades, but now I realize it's all empty. I've been so focused on being the best that I forgot how to just be human. I've surrounded myself with things instead of people. Tom nodded, a knowing look in his eyes. "Sometimes it takes losing everything to realize what really matters. You're not as alone as you think you are, you know." His words lingered in the air, heavy with truth. I could feel a connection forming between us, a bond forged in shared vulnerability. We were two men from different worlds, yet somehow our paths had converged in this moment. As the evening wore on, we shared more stories, his laughter ringing out like music, easing the tension that had filled the room. I found myself captivated by his resilience, his spirit. It was a stark contrast to my own life of isolation. "Maybe we can make a difference together," I suggested, my heart racing with the thrill of newfound possibility. "I want to help others like you. I want to give back." Tom's eyes lit up with a spark of hope. "That's a start, Richard. But remember, it takes more than just money to make a difference. It takes heart." I nodded, feeling the weight of his words settle deep within me. It was the beginning of something profound, a journey that would challenge everything I thought I knew about life, friendship, purpose. As the sun dipped low in the sky, casting a warm golden hue across the room, I found myself sitting across from Tom at the dining table, the remnants of our dinner still scattered about. The clinking of utensils had faded, replaced by a comfortable silence that felt both foreign and welcome. I could see Duke lying at Tom's feet, tail thumping softly against the wooden floor, as if he could sense the connection growing between us. "Richard," Tom said, breaking the silence, voice steady and low, "you seem like a man who's always trying to prove something. To yourself, maybe? To the world?" I hesitated, caught off guard by the directness of his words. "You could say that. My family has always had high expectations. It's hard to shake that off, you know?" I leaned back in my chair, feeling the weight of my own truth. I've spent my life trying to be the best at everything. Sometimes I wonder if it's worth it. Tom looked at me thoughtfully, his eyes reflecting a depth of understanding that caught me by surprise. "I get that. In the military we had this bond, this camaraderie. It wasn't about being the best, it was about having each other's backs. The moment I came back from the war, I lost that. Now it's just me and Duke." He reached down to scratch the dog behind the ears, and Duke responded with a satisfied sigh. "What was it like?" I asked, curiosity piqued. "Out there, in the thick of it?" Tom's expression shifted slightly, a shadow crossing his features. "It was intense. You rely on your brothers in arms more than you can imagine. Every day is a fight, not just against the enemy, but against your own fears. When you lose that connection, it leaves a hole. He paused, his voice dropping to a whisper. When I came back, I just didn't fit anymore. The honesty in his words struck a chord deep within me. I had been so wrapped up in my own struggles that I had overlooked the very real battles others faced. You've been through so much, I said softly, a new wave of empathy washing over me. I can't even begin to understand what you've experienced. Tom shrugged, a small smile breaking through his somber demeanor. It's just life, Richard. We all carry our scars. Some are visible, some are not. You know what? The real struggle is finding a way to heal. That's what I see in you. A man who's been running from something. I felt exposed, as if he had peeled back layers I had carefully constructed to protect myself. You might be right. I've spent so long trying to impress others that I've forgotten what it means to simply connect with someone. He nodded, his gaze unwavering. That's why I admire you for reaching out to me. Most people wouldn't even think twice. It takes courage to stand against the tide. Courage? I echoed, feeling the weight of his acknowledgement. I don't feel very courageous. It's easier to hide in my mansion than to face the world. Tom leaned forward, his intensity palpable. Don't mistake solitude for safety. It's a choice, yes, but it's also a prison. You have a chance to break free and embrace the messiness of life. You've already taken the first step by inviting me here. I pondered his words, feeling a flicker of hope ignite within me. You're right. I've been so afraid of the world outside that I forgot how to truly live in it. Maybe I've been hiding from myself as well. Then let's change that, Tom suggested, his enthusiasm infectious. We can start small. Let's find a way to give back, to help others. There are veterans out there who need support, just like I did. We can make a difference together. I could feel the sparks of inspiration igniting a fire in my chest. You mean volunteering at the shelter? I asked, excitement bubbling up within me. Exactly. And I know a few guys who would love to meet you. They've been through hell and back, but they still have hope. They just need someone to believe in them. A smile broke across my face, a genuine feeling that I hadn't experienced in years. Let's do it. I want to help. I want to connect. Good, Tom said, his smile mirroring mine. You won't regret it. And who knows, you might just find what you've been searching for all along. In that moment, surrounded by the remnants of our dinner and Duke's contented sighs, I felt a shift within me. Perhaps, just perhaps, I was beginning to understand the true meaning of connection, friendship, and of purpose. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a warm golden hue across the room, I found myself sitting at the dining table with Tom. The clinking of forks and the soft rustle of Duke's paws against the hardwood floor created a comforting backdrop to our first real dinner together. I had prepared a simple meal, but it felt like a feast. Perhaps because it was the first time in a long while that I wasn't dining alone. Not bad for a novice cook, right? I attempted to lighten the mood, a smirk playing on my lips. Tom chuckled, a sound that struck me as genuine and refreshing. Better than some of the MREs I've had, replied, grinning as he took a bite of the roasted chicken. Though I must admit, it's nice to eat off real plates again. His words struck a chord deep within me. Here I was, a man who had everything: wealth, status, a mansion filled with art. And yet, I had never really considered the simple pleasure of sharing a meal. I can't imagine what it must be like out there, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. Tom paused, looking thoughtful. It's not just about the food, Richard. It's the company, the warmth of a smile, the safety of knowing someone cares. His eyes met mine, and in that moment, I felt a surge of vulnerability. I had been so wrapped up in my own problems that I had forgotten the essence of human connection. Do you ever miss it? I asked, leaning forward, intrigued by the layers of his experiences. The camaraderie? His expression shifted, the lightheartedness fading slightly. Every day, he admitted, his voice laced with a bittersweet nostalgia. In the army, we looked out for each other. It didn't matter if you were rich or poor, black or white, we were just brothers, fighting for each other. I swallowed hard, feeling a pang of regret for the countless times I had chosen solitude over connection. I've always felt this pressure to be the best, I confessed, my heart racing as I opened up. My family, they expect perfection. It's exhausting. Tom nodded, his expression understanding. You know, sometimes the bravest thing you can do is just be yourself. You don't have to be perfect, Richard. You just have to be real. His words resonated within me, stirring something I hadn't felt in years. As we continued to share our stories, my tales of extravagant parties and his of survival on the streets, I realized that our lives, though starkly different, were intrinsically linked by the common thread of human experience. As the night wore on, I found myself laughing more than I had in ages. Tom's stories were filled with humor, even in the face of adversity. You know, he said, leaning back in his chair, one time I tried to cook for a bunch of guys in the shelter. Let's just say the fire department got called twice. I burst into laughter, envisioning the chaos he must have created. You're lucky you didn't end up homeless for real, I teased, feeling a warmth blooming in my chest. Hey, at least I still have my hair, he shot back, mock seriously, running a hand through his tousled lock. In that moment, I felt a bond forming, a connection that transcended our circumstances. It was more than just friendship. It was an understanding that both of us were navigating uncharted waters. I shared with him the pressure that came from my family, the expectations that hung over me like a dark cloud. It's like I'm stuck in this gilded cage, I admitted, my voice shaking slightly. Everything looks perfect from the outside, but inside, it's suffocating. Tom's gaze softened, and he leaned closer. You're not alone in this, Richard. You've got me now. And if you ever feel trapped, just remember you can always break free. As I looked into his eyes, I realized I had found a friend in the unlikeliest of places. Tom had become a mirror, reflecting not just my fears, but also my hopes. I had always been searching for something more, something real, and now I felt it, solid and grounding, like the companionship of Duke, who lay resting at our feet, a silent witness to our awakening friendship. The night ended with a comfortable silence hanging in the air. I felt lighter, as though the burdens I had carried for so long were beginning to lift. Maybe, just maybe, I was finally starting to understand the true meaning of connection. And as I watched Tom interact with Duke, a warmth spread through me, signaling that I was on the right path. As I sat in my lavish living room, the weight of my family's expectations bore down on me like an oppressive fog. The ornate chandelier above me sparkled. The brilliance of it all felt distant, as if it belonged to a different world. I took a deep breath, glancing at my phone. There it was, another message from my mother, her words sharp enough to cut through the haze of my newfound purpose. Richard, please reconsider this friendship with that man. He's not one of us. You've worked too hard to let someone like him tarnish your reputation. My heart sank. I didn't reply. Instead, I tossed the phone onto the plush couch and stared out the window, where the world bustled with life. Tom was out there, probably with Duke, enjoying the simple pleasures I had long forgotten. I felt a pang of guilt for my growing connection with him, but it was drowned out by the warmth of our shared moments. Richie? Tom's voice broke through my thoughts as he entered the room, his face lit up with a smile that could rival the sun. You okay? Yeah, just thinking. I forced a smile, but it felt like a mask. Tom leaned against the doorframe, his casual stance easing some of my tension. You've been quiet lately. Everything all right with your family? I can't help but feel like I'm causing a rift. I sighed, running a hand through my hair. Complicated. They don't understand. They think I'm throwing my life away by helping you. They want me to cut ties. Cut ties? He raised an eyebrow, the innocent confusion on his face tugging at my heart. Why? Because I'm just a vet living on the streets? It's more than that, replied, frustration creeping into my voice. They think you're a project, something I'm doing out of pity. They don't see what I see. Which is what? Tom challenged, his gaze steady and piercing. Friend, I admitted, my voice barely above a whisper. Someone who's been through hell and back, and yet still has the strength to keep going. Tom's expression softened, but I could see the flicker of uncertainty in his eyes. You really mean that? Of course I do, I said, stepping closer. You've shown me things I never understood. I was lost in my own world of privilege, but you opened my eyes to reality. Richie, I don't want to come between you and your family, he said, his voice low. I appreciate everything you've done for me, but I don't want to be the reason for your heartache. I shook my head. Thought of losing Tom felt unbearable. You're not the reason, it's them. It's their expectations. They don't understand that helping you isn't a burden, it's a gift. Just then, my phone buzzed again, the screen lighting up with another message from my mother. You need to think about your future. This isn't a game. I tossed the phone aside, frustration boiling over. Why can't they see that this friendship is changing me for the better? Can't they understand that the real world isn't just about money and status? Tom stepped forward, his expression earnest. Maybe it's time to confront them, Richie. Stand up for what you believe. I studied his face, a determination there igniting something within me. You think so? Absolutely. You deserve to live your life for yourself, not for them. You're not a puppet on strings. You're a man with a heart. I nodded slowly, the reality of his words settling in. You're right, I can't keep living in their shadow. I need to take a stand. Tom smiled, a glimmer of hope shining in his eyes. Then let's do it together. You can't let them dictate your happiness. In that moment, I felt a surge of courage. You're right, I'll talk to them, and I'll make them understand, no matter what it takes. As I resolved to confront my family, the weight of their expectations felt a little lighter, bolstered by the strength of my friendship with Tom. I knew this journey wouldn't be easy, but I was ready to embrace it. As evening settled in, casting a warm glow through the large windows of my mansion, I found myself sitting across from Tom at the dining table. The remnants of our dinner lay scattered around us. The food was forgotten in the weight of the moment. I could sense that something was about to shift, and my heart raced with anticipation. Richard, Tom began, his voice steady, yet laced with an undercurrent of pain. There's something I need to tell you. He looked down, his fingers tracing the rim of his glass, and I felt an instinctive knot form in my stomach. I had come to care for him deeply, and I knew this was serious. What is it, Tom? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. You can tell me anything. He took a deep breath, as if summoning the courage to unearth a long-buried secret. It's about my past, the reason I ended up well where I was before. I watched him intently, my heart pounding in my chest. He paused, and I could see the conflict in his eyes. During the war, I was accused of a crime I didn't commit. A fellow soldier died, and they pinned it on me. I was court-martialed, and after that, everything fell apart. I lost my family, my friends, and eventually, I lost myself. The words hung in the air, heavy with the weight of his truth. Tom, I had no idea. I'm so sorry, I said, feeling a rush of empathy wash over me. That must have been unbearable. It was, he replied, voice cracking. I went from being a soldier to a ghost. I lived on the streets because I thought I deserved it. I thought I could never go back to the person I was. I leaned forward, my heart aching for him. You're not that person anymore. You've changed, Tom. You've fought back and found your way again. He shook his head, a bitter smile forming on his lips. You don't understand. I've been running from my past, but it's always there, lurking. I'm afraid that if people find out, they'll see me as that monster, not the man I've tried to become. I felt a surge of anger rise within me, not towards Tom, but towards the world that had treated him so cruelly. They don't get to define who you are, Tom. You're a good person. You've shown me what it means to be brave, to care for others. That's what matters. He looked up, his eyes glistening with unshed tears. Thank you, Richard. But it's not just about me. I'm worried about you. This friendship, my past, it could ruin everything for me. No, I said firmly, shaking my head. I won't let that happen. You're my friend and I won't abandon you. We'll face this together. Tom's expression softened, and for a moment the weight of his burden seemed to lighten. Then a shadow crossed his face again. What if your family finds out? They won't understand. They'll only see a homeless veteran with a dark past. The thought sent a chill down my spine. My family had always been about appearances, about maintaining a certain status, but I couldn't let that dictate my life anymore. I don't care what they think. You've shown me the importance of compassion, of standing up for what's right. I want to help you, Tom. He looked at me, a flicker of hope in his eyes. You really mean that? Absolutely, replied, feeling a surge of determination. We're going to do something. We need to raise awareness, to show people the truth about veterans like you who have been wronged. We can organize an event, something to bring attention to the cause. Tom's face brightened. and I could see the gears turning in his mind. You think that could work? People would care? Of course they will, I insisted, my voice growing stronger. We'll gather support. Share your story. You deserve justice, Tom, and I won't stop until we get it. As we began to sketch out our plans, the weight of his secret transformed into a shared mission. Felt like a turning point, not just for Tom, but for me as well. We were two men, each carrying our own scars, willing to fight against the shadows of our past. Together, we would confront the challenges ahead, and I knew that whatever lay in store for us, we would face it side by side. The day of the charity event had finally arrived, and a nervous energy buzzed through me like electricity. As I walked through the grand hall of my mansion, transformed to a vibrant venue filled with decorations and smiling faces, I couldn't shake the feeling that this was more than just another social gathering. This was a turning point, not just for Tom, but for me as well. "Are you ready, Richard?" Tom asked, his voice steady despite the chaos around us. He was adjusting his collar in front of a mirror, a hint of a smile on his lips. Duke, his loyal dog, sat obediently at his feet, his tail wagging like a metronome. "Ready as I'll ever be," I replied, trying to match his calmness. My heart raced as I glanced around, taking in the sight of guests mingling, laughter spilling into the air, and the beautiful table set with a feast that would make any chef proud. But this was not just about the food or the ambiance. It was about the message we were trying to convey. "Remember, it's about the people we're helping," Tom said, his eyes meeting mine with an intensity that grounded me. "Everything else is just background noise." I nodded, grateful for his perspective. "You're right. It's easy to get lost in all this." I gestured around the room. "But if we can make a difference, even for just one person, it will all be worth it." As the clock ticked closer to the start of the event, I felt a wave of anxiety wash over me. My family's disapproval loomed large in my mind, the threat of their judgment like a storm cloud overhead. But I pushed those thoughts aside, focusing instead on the faces of the veterans we had met during our time volunteering together. They were the reason we were here. They were the heart of this event. Finally, it was time for my speech. Standing before the crowd, I felt my palms grow sweaty as I grasped the microphone. The chatter hushed, and a sea of expectant faces turned toward me. "Thank you all for being here tonight," I began, my voice slightly trembling but gaining strength with each word. "This evening is not just a fundraiser. It's a celebration of community, resilience, and the bonds we forge through our shared experiences." Tom stood off to the side, his presence a steady anchor. I could see Duke lying at his feet, his head resting on his paws, embodying the calm that I desperately needed. "I want to share a story," it continued, trying to draw everyone in. "A story about friendship and redemption. When I met Tom, I was lost in my own world of privilege and isolation. I had everything, yet I felt empty. It wasn't until I saw him, sitting on a park bench with his cat, sharing a moment of joy, that I realized what I was missing." There were murmurs of curiosity from the crowd, and I pressed on. Tom opened my eyes to the struggles many face every day. Struggles that I had turned a blind eye to for too long. His strength, his determination, and his unwavering spirit inspired me to act, to step outside my comfort zone. And tonight, we come together to support those who need it the most. I glanced at Tom, who nodded encouragingly. "This isn't just about raising money, it's about creating a community where everyone feels valued. We can all do our part, no matter how small." As I wrapped up my speech, I felt a swell of emotion rising within me. I want to thank Tom for being a guiding light in my life, for showing me the true meaning of friendship. Let's make tonight count. The applause that erupted was thunderous, filling me with a mixture of relief and exhilaration. As I stepped back, I spotted Tom's proud smile, and in that moment, I realized how far we had both come. We were no longer just two individuals from different worlds. We were allies in a shared mission. The event was a resounding success. People mingled, shared their stories, and donated generously. Yet, in the midst of celebration, my thoughts drifted back to my family. I had fought hard to make this happen. The battle was far from over. I knew that while the night was a victory for us, the true challenge lay ahead. As weeks passed after the fundraising event, palpable energy buzzed through our community. Tom and I had become something of a local sensation. Our story was shared in the newspapers, and our faces adorned flyers, encouraging others to join us in our mission to help those in need. It felt surreal. I had never imagined that my life could take such a turn. I could be a part of something so meaningful, so transformative. One evening, as I sat on the porch of my mansion, the sun was setting, casting a golden hue over the sprawling gardens. Tom and Duke were sprawled out on the grass, the dog playfully rolling in the fading light. I leaned back in my chair, a smile creeping onto my face as I watched them. The laughter we shared echoed in the air, a sound I had long forgotten. "Hey, Richard," Tom called out, tossing a stick for Duke. "You should join us. It's a perfect night for some fresh air." "Maybe in a minute," I replied, taking a moment to appreciate how much my life had changed. "I'm just soaking it all in." Tom chuckled, shaking his head. "You always overthink things. Sometimes you just have to let go and enjoy the moment." His words struck a chord within me. I had spent so much of my life meticulously planning every detail, always striving for perfection. But here I was, surrounded by simple joys I'd overlooked for far too long. As I joined them, I felt a warmth in my heart, an understanding that I had never fully embraced before. "You know, Tom," I began, settling onto the grass beside him, "I can't remember the last time I felt this free." "It's all about perspective," he said, tossing another stick for Duke. "You've got to let life flow, man. You've been so caught up in what others think that you forgot to live for yourself." I looked at him, feeling an overwhelming sense of gratitude. "You've taught me so much about that. I used to think happiness came from wealth and success. Now I realize it's about connection, about moments like this." Tom nodded, his expression thoughtful. "It's funny how life works, huh? We both came from different worlds, but here we are, helping each other find our way." Just then, my phone buzzed on the table beside me. I glanced at the screen. My mother's name flashed ominously. I hesitated, but finally picked it up. "I'll be right back," I said, standing up and walking a few paces away. "Richard, don't let them get to you," Tom called after me. "You've come too far to let them pull you back." I felt the weight of his words as I answered the call. "Hello, Mother. Richard, we need to talk," she said, her tone clipped. "This nonsense with that man Tom needs to stop. You're ruining your reputation with these associations." I clenched my jaw, frustration building. "He's not just that man, Mom. He's my friend. He's helped me more than you can imagine." "Friend? You're throwing your life away for a homeless man?" She scoffed. "What will people think? You're embarrassing your family." "Embarrassing?" I shot back. "You think I care about appearances? I've finally found purpose, something real, and you want me to toss it away for your approval?" "Richard, you're not thinking clearly. This will end badly," she warned. "You're playing with fire." "Maybe I need to play with fire for once," I replied defiantly, feeling the weight of my family's expectations lifting. "I won't apologize for choosing compassion over privilege." I hung up, my chest heaving with emotion. Tom watched me, concern etched on his face. "You okay?" "Not really," I admitted, sinking back onto the grass. "They just don't understand what I'm doing. They think I'm making a mistake." "You're not making a mistake, Richard," Tom said, placing a reassuring hand on my shoulder. "You're doing something brave. You're choosing to be authentic." "I just wish they could see it," I sighed, staring into the distance. "Feels like the more I embrace this new life, the more they push back." Tom nodded, his gaze steady. "Family can be tough, man, but you have to stand by what you believe in. You've got to fight for the people who matter." "You matter, Tom," I said, looking him in the eye. "This friendship is worth all the struggle." "I appreciate that," he replied, a soft smile crossing his face. "And I'm here for you, no matter what. We'll figure this out together." As we sat there, the sun dipping below the horizon, I realized that this was my new reality. I would face challenges, but I wouldn't back down. I had found something worth fighting for, something far more valuable than wealth or status. In the warmth of that moment, surrounded by friendship, I felt a profound sense of belonging, finally understanding what it meant to be truly free. The evening air was crisp as Tom and I sat on the porch, the fading sunlight casting a warm glow over the garden. Duke lay peacefully at our feet, his tail thumping softly against the wooden boards. We had just enjoyed another of our heart-to-heart conversations, something that had become the highlight of my day. But now, there was a weight in the silence that hung between us, like a cloud waiting to burst. "Richard," Tom said suddenly, breaking the quiet. His voice was measured, almost hesitant. "I've been thinking about something." "What's on your mind?" I asked, my curiosity piqued. I turned to face him, noticing the way his brow furrowed slightly, a telltale sign that he was wrestling with something important. "I'm thinking about starting fresh somewhere else," continued, gazing out into the distance, as if searching for answers in the twilight. "A place where my past won't follow me. Somewhere I can just begin again." The words hit me like a cold splash of water. "You mean leaving? But what about here? What about us?" My heart raced as I struggled to process the idea. This was the last thing I wanted to hear. Tom had become such an integral part of my life, my newfound purpose. The thought of him walking away felt like losing a part of myself. Tom turned to me, his expression softening. "I know it sounds drastic, but sometimes I just feel like I'm a ghost here, always haunted by what's happened. I don't want to be a burden to you." "A burden?" I scoffed, shaking my head. "Tom, you're anything but a burden. You've changed my life in ways I can't even describe. You've shown me what it means to be truly alive." I leaned forward, urgency in my voice. "Why would you think you'd be a burden? We've been through so much together." He sighed, running a hand through his hair. "It's just that I see how much you've grown, Richard. You're becoming someone amazing. And I can't help but think that maybe my presence is holding you back. Maybe you'd be better off without me." I felt a pang in my chest at his words. "You don't get it, do you? You're not just my friend, you're my brother. Connection we have is invaluable. I don't want to lose that." I paused, searching his eyes for understanding. "What about Duke? He loves having you around as much as I do." Tom chuckled softly, but there was sadness behind it. "Duke is a good boy, but this isn't just about him. I've got my own demons to deal with, Richard. My past is a heavy load, and I don't want it to weigh you down." "Tom, we all have our pasts." I leaned back in my chair, crossing my arms. "You've faced so much, and you're still here. You're a fighter. You deserve a chance to be happy, and so do I. But we can't do it alone. We need each other." He looked at me, searching my face for sincerity. "I appreciate that. I really do. But I don't want you to feel trapped because of me." "Trapped? No, I feel liberated. You've helped me see that there's more to life than just wealth and status. You've opened my eyes to the real world, to the struggles, the joys, and the connections that matter." Took a deep breath, trying to steady my racing heart. "I can't bear the thought of you leaving, Tom." He hesitated, the tension palpable. "But what if my leaving is what's best for you? What if I'm just a reminder of everything you're trying to escape?" "Then let me decide what's best for me," I said, my voice rising. "I want you in my life. You've shown me the importance of compassion and understanding. I don't want to lose that. Life is too short for regrets, Tom." Tom studied me for a long moment, and I could see the conflict in his eyes. I don't want to cause you pain. You've worked so hard to build this new life." "Pain is a part of life, Tom. So is love. So is friendship. I'd rather face the pain of our struggles together than live a life without you in it." The words hung in the air, charged with emotion. Tom nodded slowly, flicker of hope igniting in his eyes. "You really mean that?" "Absolutely," I affirmed, feeling a sense of clarity wash over me. "We're in this together, no matter what." The tension that had gripped us began to fade, and I felt a sense of relief. Duke stood up, shaking himself awake, sensing the shift in the atmosphere. I reached down to scratch behind his ears, feeling grateful for the bond we had formed. "All right," Tom said, a tentative smile breaking through. "Let's keep this friendship going then, no matter where it takes us." "Together," I replied, my heart swelling with gratitude. "Always." I was sitting in my study, staring blankly at the wall, when my phone rang, jolting me from my thoughts. The number was unfamiliar, but something compelled me to answer. "Hello?" I said, my voice thick with apprehension. "Mr. Hargrove?" a stern voice replied. "This is Jonathan Ellis, an attorney representing your family." The air became heavy in my lungs as I braced myself for what was to come. "I need to inform you that your family is pursuing legal action against Mr. Tom Reynolds. They claim he has sullied the family name." My heart dropped. "What? For what?" I demanded, my voice rising involuntarily. There was an incident during his military service that they believe could reflect poorly on you and your family's reputation, he explained, his tone unyielding. They want to ensure that he is held accountable. I felt like I had been punched in the gut. Tom had been through enough. He didn't deserve this, not after everything we had fought for together. You can't be serious, I said, struggling to keep my voice steady. Tom was wronged. He's innocent. Your family believes otherwise, Jonathan said coolly. You should think carefully about where your loyalties lie. The call ended with a hollow click, leaving me reeling. I sank into my chair, the weight of the world pressing down on my shoulders. My thoughts raced. I had to protect Tom. He had opened my eyes to a world beyond my mansion's walls, a world filled with compassion and resilience. I couldn't let my family's greed and ignorance ruin that. Richard? Tom's voice broke through my turmoil as he entered the room, Duke trailing behind him. I looked up, forcing a smile that didn't reach my eyes. Hey Tom, just got a call from my family. They're planning to sue you. Tom's expression shifted from confusion to disbelief. What? Why? They think you've tarnished the Hargrove name, I said, my voice cracking with emotion. They're trying to hold you responsible for something you didn't do. Tom ran a hand through his hair, frustration evident on his face. I can't believe this. I didn't choose this life. I didn't ask for any of this. You don't have to face this alone, I said, my resolve hardening. I'm going to confront my family. I won't let them get away with this. Richard, I appreciate that, but... No buts, I interrupted, my heart racing. You're my friend, and I won't stand by while they try to ruin you. You deserve better, Tom. Later that evening, I found myself outside my family's estate, a place that had once felt like home, but now seemed more like a prison. The air was thick with tension as I stepped through the grand entrance, my heart pounding in my chest. Richard, my mother greeted me sharply, her eyes narrowing. We heard about that man you're associating with. You need to cut ties with him. Cut ties? I echoed incredulously. He's my friend. You don't understand what he's been through. He's innocent. Richard, you're not thinking clearly, my father chimed in, his voice cold and dismissive. He's a liability. This could ruin your reputation and ours. Is that all you care about? I shot back, my voice rising. Your reputation? What about Tom's life? You think he chose to be homeless? You think he wanted to be accused of something he didn't do? Enough, my mother snapped. You're being foolish. This man is a disgrace. No, you're the disgrace, I said, stepping closer, my heart racing. You're willing to throw someone under the bus to protect your precious image. Tom has shown me what it means to be brave and to care for others. You wouldn't know anything about that. Richard, you're jeopardizing your future, my father warned, his voice low and threatening. I'd rather jeopardize my future than lose someone who has taught me the true meaning of friendship. Declared, feeling a rush of adrenaline. I'm going to stand by Tom, no matter what. As I stormed out of the house, I felt lighter, even with the weight of my family's disapproval on my shoulders. I had chosen my path, and it led me to Tom. The next day, I gathered my courage and went to see him. Tom, I'm going to fight this, I said, determination etched on my face. I'll tell them the truth about you. You deserve justice. Tom's eyes widened, filled with a mix of gratitude and concern. Richard, you don't have to do this for me. It could cost you everything. I don't care, I replied fiercely. You've been there for me when I needed it most. It's time for me to be there for you. With a deep breath, I prepared to confront my family and expose the truth. In that moment, I realized that true wealth was not measured in money or status, but in the courage to stand up for those we care about. I was ready to fight for Tom, ready to confront the injustices that plagued us both, and ready to reclaim our lives.